They say, grief keeps you safe, but apparently, a 3-year-old's logic can crash through any fortress. My 3-year-old Yen, who still carried the frozen memory of her mighty general father, the very last image of him kissing her goodbye for duty call, the last duty he never returned from. Suddenly, one day she charged toward a general and screamed, "Papa!" The Alpha General, who used to leading 10,000 men into fire and death, froze under the siege of a toddler's unwavering conviction. One accidental misidentity, and my world shattered and rebuilt in ways I never saw coming. This is how everything changed. Welcome to Mending Hearts. Slip on your headphones and let the story begin. 2 years have passed since my Alpha rode west and vanished into the dust beyond the frontier. The wind from the western marches still smells of iron when it blows through the courtyard, but his voice has long dissolved in it. For a while, the food provisions came, sacks of millet, stamped with his unit seal. But each month they grew lighter until one spring the courier stopped coming altogether. At the magistrate's office, the clerk searched the scrolls and declared our records could not be found, as if the blood my Alpha shed, defending our homeland, had already dried and been forgotten. I walked home through the market that day with empty sleeves. Around me, wore banners of different regions, with varied insignias fluttered proudly in the wind. I looked at the banners, wondering if the gods had forgotten us too. That same summer, the river broke its banks. The fields drowned beneath a skin of mud, and I sold the last of our grain for my daughter's fever medicine. The house smells of damp straw and boiled water, the roof sighs when it rains. Neighbors pass our door with soft voices, as if pity itself might wake the ghosts that live here. At night, when the lamps gutter low, I unfold the faded uniform he left behind, and whisper to its silence, pretending he still hears. His Alpha pheromones long gone. My daughter, Yen, stirred beside me, her breath thin and quick. I pressed my palm against her ribs to count how many bones still answered my touch, and listened to the hollow in her belly whisper what the Empire had chosen to forget. When she woke, she asked for rice again, and I lied that the pot's still waiting on the fire, that the morning had not yet come. But the sun would rise soon, and I had no more millet left. The last handful was scraped from the jar last evening, and I tried to stretch it by mixing it thinner than the old recipes said. Still, she drank it all before night fell. She was only 3, too young to understand why her father's hands trembled as he fed her from the cracked bowl. Too young to know why my chest ached with fear that tomorrow there might be nothing at all. I brushed back her soft black hair and kissed her forehead, whispering shakily, "Hush now. Just wait a little more. Papa will fix this." Fix this? But how? I was a widowed Omega in a world that had no place for one. An Omega without a bonded Alpha was a liability, a mistake left behind by war. Once, I had stood in gallant honor beside my Alpha, General Jianghun, commander of the northern garrison, when banners still flew and the soldiers saluted our name. Then came the last campaign at Yumen Pass, and he never returned. The food provision stopped, the registry erased us. This was worse than being invisible. It was betrayal, pity, scorn. No one helped us. No one met my eyes. And yet tonight, as the wind scraped against the shutters and my daughter stirred in her hunger, desperation rose inside me so fierce it almost sounded like pride. The morning market smelled of soy, grease, smoke, and dreams I couldn't afford. Steam from the food stalls curled like silk ribbons above the street, and every hiss of an oil pan made my daughter's stomach growl louder. I'd only turned away for a moment to ask the cloth merchant if he still needed help tallying his accounts, when Yen disappeared. By the time I caught sight of her again, she was halfway across the square, little feet slapping against the stones, hair bouncing like a puff of ink toward a table. And there, under the shade of a parasol, 6 enormous soldiers sat around a low table piled with food, buns, roast duck, shining pots of wine. Their armor clinked with every laugh. Before I could even shout her name, my daughter darted forward, reached for the biggest bun on the nearest plate, and bit into it like a starving kitten. The soldiers froze mid-laughter, 6 pairs of eyes staring at this little intruder, some shocked, some amused, one with a look that said, "Whose child is this, with no manners?" Unfortunately, the bun she picked up was being reached for at that exact same moment by the man at the head of the table. His hand paused midair, fingers inches from her tiny fist. His armor bore the crimson insignia of the Imperial Army. His face, weathered, sharp-boned, terrifyingly domineering, was unmistakable. Even to me was none other than the Grand General Li Jing. My mind went blank. My breath stopped. And there I stood, hollow-eyed and half-frozen, a single thought ringing in my skull like a temple bell. "My dear sweet pie, of all the buns in the Empire, you had to take that one?" For a long, impossible second, no one moved. The world held its breath, men forged in war, who had seen 1,000 deaths and roared 1,000 war cries, now silenced by a 3-year-old munching innocently on a bun. Then the child looked up, cheeks puffed, mouth still full. "Papa, it's sweet," she mumbled, crumbs raining down her chin. A thunderous laughter broke from among the General Li Jing's comrades. But not Li Jing himself, because he was stone-froze in shock by what my child had just called him. I stared at the general's pitiful face from across the street, carefully observing what he'd do to my child. No lion roar I has expected, only the shock of seeing a ghost in daylight plastered on his war-hardened face. And then it happened. Li Jing, the Grand General of the Central Command, the man whose name made border tribes tremble, actually laughed. The sound rolled through the street like thunder that had forgotten to be frightening. "Sweet, is it?" he said, picking up my daughter and placed her on his thigh. "Then eat, little pup. The army doesn't fight on an empty stomach." The soldiers erupted in laughter, pounding the table in relief. One slid open a hard-boiled egg toward her, another tore off a piece of duck drumstick. My daughter blinked up at them, uncertain whether she was in trouble, then took a second bite, just in case it was all a dream. I found my feet again, stumbling forward with my heart somewhere in my throat. "General, she doesn't understand?" "No, I'm so sorry she hasn't eaten since." Li Jing raised a hand, still smiling at my kid, not me, and said, "Then she shall eat now." His voice simply carried the quiet command of a man used to being obeyed. He looked at me then, truly looked, and something unreadable flickered behind his eyes. "Join her," he added. "A child shouldn't have to eat alone." Then he kicked all of his men to the next table and called for new dishes to be served. And for the first time in 2 years, I sat at a table where the bowls were full. For a while, I forgot how to move. My fingers hovered over the bowl, unsure whether to eat or apologize again. The smell of meat and sesame hit me like a memory from another lifetime. Steam curled against my face. My stomach answered before my pride could intervene. The soldiers on the next tables went on eating, pretending not to notice me, though I caught a few sideways glances, curiosity mixed with the kind of pity men hide behind laughter. My daughter sat in between, gnawing on a bun twice the size of her fist, her cheeks sticky with sauce. She had never looked happier. Across the table, the general drank in silence. Even seated, he carried the weight of command. The air around him seemed too disciplined for the marketplace. When his gaze finally met mine again, it wasn't unkind, but it was measuring, like a man taking stock of a battlefield. I bowed my head, my voice barely steady. "We owe you a debt, General. I will repay." He cut me off with a wave of his hand, eyes still on my daughter. "Feed her first. The Empire has enough debts already." His words were gentle, but they carried the gravity of law. I lowered my eyes and lifted the spoon. The porridge burned my tongue, but for the first time in years, I didn't mind the pain. When the bowls were cleared and my heartbeat returned to something resembling life, feeling fire had returned to my belly, I thanked the soldiers and prepared to flee before the universe invented a new humiliation for me. Yen Yen, however, had other plans. She climbed onto the bench beside the general again as if she'd been doing it her whole life. Her tiny hands reached for the last sesame pancake cooling on the plate. My face must have looked like a horrified emoji. I lunged at Yen Yen. "General, please forgive her." "Papa, can I have this one?" she asked innocently, looking up at General Li Jing. Every sound in the courtyard died at Yanyan's second mention of the word Papa. Even the wind seemed to stop to witness my ruin. Li Jing blinked once, twice. Then, astonishingly, he smiled. "You'd better ask your real Papa," he said, almost tenderly. Yan tilted her head, blinking up at him, all wide-eyed with questioning innocence. "You are Papa," she said simply. "Papa also likes this bun-bun." The soldiers choked. One coughed tea through his nose. Another pretended to inspect his spear. I could feel the heat climb from my collar to my ears. I assure you, General, she doesn't. She means she's confused." But Yan wasn't finished. "Papa not coming home with us?" she asked, big eyes solemn and expectant. "We have room. Papa can sleep next to me." I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. My hand shot out to cover her little mouth. "Yan, stop talking," I hissed, half pleading, half dying. Li Jing's shoulders shook once, either from suppressed laughter or divine mercy. "That's very kind of you," he managed. "But Papa has to guard the Empire Gate tonight." Yan considered this seriously, then nodded. "Then tomorrow?" He looked at me, eyes bright with amusement I was too mortified to share. "Tomorrow," he said, "if the Empire allows." She clapped her sticky hands, entirely satisfied. "Bye-bye, Papa," she sang as he rose. I bowed so low my forehead nearly met the ground. "General, please disregard everything she..." Li Jing waved it off with a low chuckle. "No harm done. Children speak truths adults forget." I scooped Yan into my arms and fled with all the dignity panic would allow, praying the wind might take mercy and delete this entire morning from history. Around Li Jing, his soldiers hurried to refill his table with wine and cups, saluting to hide their laughter. One leaned in and murmured, "General, congratulations, you've been promoted to fatherhood." That night, the house smelled faintly of sesame and dry wormwood. The ghosts of a meal too fine for us still lingered around us. Yan slept curled beside me, her tiny fingers gripped the clothed doll made from straw I made for her. I should have been grateful, relieved even. Instead, a knot sat in my chest, pulling tighter with every breath. When the lamp burned low, I whispered, "Yan, why did you call the General Papa?" Her lashes fluttered. For a moment, I thought she hadn't heard me. Then she sat up, her hair a dark halo against the dim light. Without a word, she slipped off the mat and padded across the floor. She stopped at the old cedar chest in the corner. The latch creaked softly as she lifted it. Inside, neatly folded, lay what little I couldn't bear to sell. A set of battle-scarred armor gear, the faint scent of rusted iron and aged leather still clinging to it. Yan jabbed her small finger at it. "Papa wore this." The lamplight caught on the brass clasp, and for a heartbeat, the world stilled. It clicked. The same gleam. The same proud lines, seen on General Li Jing's armor that morning. The resemblance. The recognition that should have been comforting, turned into quiet knife stabs at my chest. My baby, so sure, so innocent, had linked with the only memory of her father that was kept frozen in her little head. To a stranger. Yan turned to me, eyes wide, in that pure, unfiltered way only children can be. "This is Papa's clothes. Same shiny clothes Papa wore this morning." Something inside me cracked, sharp as pain stretched through my chest. I hurried to kneel beside her, pulled her into my arms, pressed her small head against my chest. How could I let her believe what wasn't true? How could I explain that her real Papa would never come home? How could I guard her fragile faith without crushing it? Her warmth pressed against me, soft and certain, humming with so much innocence of trust that I wished nothing would ever disturb that trust. And yet, the truth of what she longed for, and what I could give her, were two separate things, a space I could neither bridge nor close. "No, my little beanie, that nice man is not your Papa. Papa he's far, far away now." She yawned, already drifting, her voice small and drowsy. "Then, ask Papa to come home." I died a little inside at her pure innocence of thoughts. I held her until she fell asleep. The shadows swayed along the walls, soft and endless. I looked at the folded armor uniform. It gleamed faintly in the lamplight, the same color as the past I still couldn't bury, a past that would never come home. At dusk, as the barracks lanterns glimmered one by one, a report arrived for General Li Jing. Provision lists lay open before him, and he pored over them, tallying the numbers, yet his thoughts kept wandering to a child with a honeyed smile, syrup-smeared cheeks, and the innocent, joyful way she had called him Papa. And to the child's mother, whom he knew nothing, saved for only for the obvious, that he was a Hwasan, male, born with the bearer of the flower-shaped birthmark. His beauty, almost ethereal, the delicate lines of his signature Hwasan face, hinting at a life once graced with privilege. Now he was too thin, his cheeks hollowed by hunger, yet he carried the dignity of one who had suffered, quietly enduring. Li Jing shook his thoughts, trying to cast them aside. It should have meant nothing. In his line of duty, he had seen hunger and desperation, in 100 forms. Yet something in that small voice tugged at him, not pity, but a restless instinct buried deep in his nature. Alphas did not ignore members of their pack, even strays who no longer knew they belonged. Zhao Sun, Li Jing called in his assistant, setting the brush aside. The adjutant straightened at once. Find out who that child and her parents are. The one from the market today. Zhao Sun blinked. Li Jing's tone stayed even, but every word carried weight. I want their status verified. Do they belong to any military household? If they do, I want to know why they were allowed to fall into such a deplorable state. Out military honor is no soldier's family should be left without ration or record. Whoever permitted this will answer to me. By the next morning, the first layer of truth arrived. Zhao Sun handed the paper over. There, etched in the careful hand of bureaucracy, stood a title that meant men listened. Captain Jiang Han, 3rd Banner, Northern Garrison, posted to the Empire's most perilous frontier. Now registered as fallen, presumed missing during the retreat at Yumen Pass. Survived by an Omega spouse and a child. Their status was still unverified. Li Jing's jaw tightened as he read. Jiang Han. He remembered the man, quiet, disciplined, a swordsman of unshakable loyalty. He had stood under Li Jing's command once, eyes bright with the same fire that made men follow him into impossible terrain. How long since the confirmation? Li Jing asked. 2 winters, General. The report was never filed beyond the border fort. He folded the parchment slowly. Send riders west. I want his remains verified, his banner accounted for. Zhao Sun bowed. And the family, sir? Li Jing looked toward the courtyard, where the morning wind carried the faint scent of wood smoke from the military kitchen, mingling with the aroma of steaming sesame buns. For a moment, he felt the echo of a small hand tugging at his sleeve. See that they're provided for until the truth is known, Li Jing said. And do it quietly. No attention. The adjutant hesitated, then allowed himself a faint smile. Understood, sir. When he left, Li Jing remained seated long after, his fingers tracing the name on the parchment. He told himself it was duty, the simple act of a commander correcting a neglected record. His alpha instinct roared beneath the surface. If one of his pack had fallen, the rest must be protected. But beneath all reason, an older truth stirred, older than rank, older than war, perhaps as old as time itself. Li Jing's alpha instinct, ancient and unshakable, homed in on the Omega with deer-like eyes, a fragile life he could not allow the world to break. It began with steaming muntao buns. On the second morning after the market fiasco, a steaming basket appeared on my doorstep, a heap of soft muntao. Still warm. No message. But the faint whiff of the military mess kitchen clung to the cloth wrap gave me some clue. I stood there for a long time, torn between laughter and fury. Someone, somewhere, thought charity was subtle. Yen Yen clapped her hands. Papa sent the buns. She declared her decision that it must be that Papa who sent the food. I could never guess where she pulled such audacity from. Maybe it was just a toddler's craving of a missed father figure in the family. Hush, I whispered, glancing around. We don't even know who. But she was already chewing. After that came rice, salted turnips, and even dried fish. All coincidentally, left at my door or delivered by soldiers who pretended they'd lost their way. Once, an entire sack of barley turned up in our yard at dawn. If it was before, I would have thought it must be the heavens split open, trumpeting that they finally saw us, and we were now officially on the god's payroll. General Li Jing, of course, said nothing. When we passed him in the street, flanked by his adjutants, eyes sharp as a hawk's, he merely inclined his head in polite acknowledgement. Nothing more. The first time Yan Yan darted out from behind my legs and shouted, "Papa!" across the square. I swear I saw him choke mid-swallow. After that, every subsequent encounter followed the same pattern. That Yan Yan would dart toward him, shouting, "Papa!" and he would sigh showingly, answering her tenderly, i.e., my little princess, before scooping her up and settling her in his arms, fully assuming the role of a doting father. Those who always trailed him quickly grew accustomed to the strange, endearing ritual of their peculiar general. Zhao Sun, the adjutant, wasn't much better at hiding amusement. "The general's benevolence extends far, Madame Minjun," he said one afternoon, helping unload a crate of flour I hadn't ordered. "Does it extend to my taxes?" I shot back, earning a rare grin. Still, beneath the humor, something in me kept bristling. Pride? Fear? Perhaps both? Because I had learned to survive by counting every handful of grain. To accept help was to let someone else's hands shape my fate, a sensation both alien and unwelcome. Thanks to General Li Jing's special attention, little Yan Yan thrived. Her cheeks filled out, her laughter rang louder, spilling through the house like sunlight. At night, when she curled against me in sleep, the air itself seemed lighter, the weight of the day softening around us. Sometimes, through the shuttered window, I saw soldiers patrolling the street. Among them, a tall figure in iron-gray armor. I knew he was the general himself, silent and composed, yet always glancing toward our gate before turning away. He told himself it was duty, I knew. Just as I told myself it was coincidence. The afternoon sun blazed like molten brass as I stumbled from the guest house kitchen, my shoulder raw from the rope that had held the trays of barley cakes. With the excess flour the general had sent, I set to work carving out a small lifeline for myself, selling my specialty cakes on consignment through the hotel, each sale a tiny stake in the fragile hope of earning my own way. There was no knowing how long General Li Jing's grace would hold, or when I might be left to fend for myself once more. I had just collected the payment when Yan Yan's tiny voice piped up behind me. "Papa's smell," she said, nose twitching. "Papa's what?" I blinked, but she was already trotting ahead, her tail cloth fluttering like a sparrow's wings. "Yan Yan, come back." By the time I turned the corner, the child had vanished through the open gates of the southern barracks. The guards, trained to face cavalry charges without flinching, looked as if they'd seen a ghost when I, an Omega, barreled into an all-alpha phalanx. Inside, sunlight spilled over rows of training soldiers. At the center, Li Jing himself, kneeling in full armor, holding a practice stick. Facing him was my daughter, tiny body, yet very determined, waving her own stick like a tiny warrior, shouting her baby voice. "Left foot forward," Li Jing was saying, tone grave. "Don't swing so high, or you'll lose balance." "But Papa like this." Yan Yan demonstrated, a wild swing that nearly hit the part between his legs. The entire camp froze. Then laughter erupted, rough and booming, rolling across the yard. Someone shouted, "Careful, little sergeant's on the field." Another yelled, "Sir, permission to spar with the little soldier." Li Jing's lips twitched, the faintest ghost of a smile. "You heard them, little sergeant. Dismissed for today." That was when I arrived, panting, mortified, my straw hat lost somewhere, forgotten. I'm so sorry, General." He rose slowly, handing the child her stick like a knight returning a sword. "No harm done," he said. "Discipline must begin early after all." The soldier snickered. My face burned hot enough to cook the barley cakes outright. Then, before I could scold Yan Yan, the barracks horn blared, sharp, urgent, signaling a courier rode through the gate, dust cloud trailing his horse. Every soldier fell silent. The man dismounted, kneeling before Li Jing. presenting a sealed box, bound in black wax and crimson thread. The color, black and red. The meaning, everyone knew too well, was the color of mourning. From the Western Front, General, the writer reported. Western Front, my breath hitched. Li Jing's expression shifted, dark and unreadable. The thing he'd seen 1,000 times over. Slowly, he turned toward me. He handed me the black-wrapped box, in total silence. The lamp burned low. The house was as quiet as a pin drop. The smell of wormwood incense and barley lingered faintly. Yen Yen had drifted to sleep, her small hand clutching her doll. Outside, the cicadas and nocturnal songbirds trilled and whispered as if nothing had changed, indifferent to the fragile peace within this house. On the table, the box lay. When the wax broke beneath my thumb, the name, Jianghan, bled across the scroll like spilled ink. Inside, a folded red cap bore the dried, crusted stain of blood. A few scorched insignia. A silver clasp, the one I had fastened to his collar the night before he left, and a small bundle of folded letters, each addressed in his familiar handwriting. The top one was brittle around the edges, the ink faded from travel and time. Jianghan's handwriting was steady, neat, the kind of hand that never wavered even in battle. I opened the first letter. I read it inside my heart. Minjun, my dearest, if this reaches you, it means I did not. But do know that my love was woven into the air you breathe. It will rise with the morning sun and rest where you lay your head. The world will keep turning and I will always be near. But don't grieve too long, my love of my heart. For you were never meant to fade with me. Eat even when it feels tasteless. Feed our child. Laugh when you can. Find warmth again, even if not with me. That will be my eternal peace on the other side. The second letter was shorter. My little Yen Yen. Know that every moment of your life, your first word, your first steps, made me a proud father. Do not feel lost. Leaf boldly, love freely, and always stay close to your mother. By the third, the lines had grown hurried, ink blotched, as if written by firelight amid chaos. Minjun, my love, if I don't return in 6 moons, that means I'm gone. Burn my armor. Don't let the world bury you with me. And the last, nothing but a smear of ink, the shape of his name dissolving halfway through. With trembling fingers, I traced each letters, each script, as if touching that final heartbeat could call him back to me. Slowly to slowly, as if feeling as heavy as 1,000 stones on my chest, I folded the letters carefully, like treasures, and pressed them to my chest. Jianghan. I breathed his name, as if the words spoke to me, as if he was speaking to me at this moment. My tears didn't fall loudly. They simply slipped soundlessly onto the paper, mingling with his words, until I could no longer tell whose sorrow it was, his or mine. For a long time I sat there, feeling the room breathe, the ticking of the dying lamp, the faint rustle of Yen Yen's sleep whispers, the quiet sigh of the night. Outside the half-open window, a lone figure stood, unmoving beneath the eaves of the roof. Li Jing, his armor stripped, clad in normal clothes, his silhouette softened by moonlight. He didn't knock, didn't speak. He just stood there, watching through the flickering lamplight, a man who had seen battlefields burn, but could not bear the quiet ruin inside that room. When I finally looked up, our eyes met through the window's half-frame. I thought he would turn away. He didn't. For that one, still moment, no rank, no title, no difference of alphas and omegas. Only 2 people, bound by what the world had taken from them. Then he bowed his head, silent, and walked into the darkness. The next few days passed quietly. Too quietly. Li Jing noticed first. The absence. No slender figure crossing the marketplace at morning break. No faint voices haggling over barley cake trays. No little girl waving from the corner stall at him, who sat waiting every morning since after handed over the black box. By the 4th morning, even Zhao Sun couldn't help but joked, "The street feels dull without your vendor friend? General?" Li Jing only frowned. But that frown deepened into something else when, on his evening patrol, he passed near the narrow lane where Minjun's small house stood. The scent hit him first. Sweet, subtle. The unmistakable, heavy warmth of peach blossom and fevered air. The omega heat, his instinct declared. His body reacted before thought could catch up. Sharp instinct buried deep in every alpha's spine. The kind that urged, protect, claim, comfort. He stopped mid-step, hand gripping the hilt of his sword, every sense alive. Then came guilt, swift and clean. Li Jing exhaled slowly, forcing his pulse to calm. The sweet peach pheromones clung to the air, so potent they almost sang. Behind the walls, he listened. Aside from little Yen Yen singing to herself playing her toys, he could hear faint rustling, someone's quiet whimper, then stillness again. It was a common routine for Omega. Every cycle, single Omega without Alpha would retreat indoors, enduring it with the aid of prepared herbal concoctions, waiting out the storm in quiet isolation. Li Jing turned to Zhao Sun, his assistant. "Double the guard on this street," he ordered quietly. "No one enters this house without my leave. Send 2 Omega matrons to stand watch inside, to help the chores. They'll know what to do." "Understood, General." Li Jing stayed away for the next 4 nights. He had to, he was a dominant alpha. And he was in his prime. More importantly, he was the leader of a pack. Finally, the storm passed. The following week, I reappeared along my usual route, delivering barley cakes to the guest houses on consignment. Morning sunlight glinted off me, probably making me look thinner, maybe even paler, but alive, thankfully, as I always did after each heat cycle. Yen Yen skipped along beside me, hand in mine, a little whirlwind of curiosity. "Why the ground yellow? Why cake so yummy? Where's Papa?" Her questions tumbled out in a cheerful jumble, echoing off the street walls like a cascade of tiny bells. And then I saw him. General Li Jing, halfway through barking orders, froze as if someone had yanked out his spine. The smile? On that stone face? His jaw twitched. Brow furrowed. Hands frozen mid-gesture. The same man I had pictured leading 10,000 riders into fire and hell now looked like a fidgeting mountain tiger stuck in a puddle. I arched an eyebrow, stifling a laugh. Should I pretend I didn't see him? Wave at him? Or point Yen Yen at the dead cockroach on the road instead? I had no clue. Later that day, he summoned us to dine with him. The great general, surrounded by maps and scrolls, looked somewhat awkward and oddly stiff when Yen Yen and I stepped into his official residence. "Papa," Yen Yen squealed, running to him like he was really his papa. His residence was huge, fit for a top general, but not flashy. Maps and scrolls crowded the walls, armor and weapons lined the corners, and every table held ink, brushes, or neatly stacked documents. Everything screamed, strategy first, luxury never. Even the chairs looked like they'd survived a battle or two. Leading us to the dining hall, he said, feigning nonchalance, "It's nothing formal. Yen Yen deserves a proper meal. So do you." Yen Yen gasped at the sparkling soy sauce drumstick. I gasped at the spread of his so-called proper meal. "Oh, Papa, this place big. Yen Yen wants stay here too." Yen Yen's innocent questions caught him completely off guard. He choked on his own saliva and started coughing very unfashionably while I tried not to laugh. After a few splutters, he finally managed, "My little princess. You're welcome to stay here, if your father allows it." Little Yen Yen literally stood the whole dinner time, jabbering non-stop at the colorful dishes served. Servants peeked in and out, each sneaking glances at the chatty little whirlwind, and at their general, whose serene, never-before-seen face made him look almost human. I couldn't help grinning. Somehow, this chaotic little scene felt oddly sweet. After dinner, the general took us for a walk by the small lake. Moonlight shimmered on the water, and my heart lurched at the sight of a huge man crouching just enough to hold Yen Yen's tiny hand. "Papa, hold Mama's hand," Yen Yen said, blinking up at him. "Hold, faster," she repeated, growing impatient as the general froze rooted on his feet. Now it was my turn to choke on my saliva. "Yen Yen," I scolded my kid gently. The general, still froze rooted on his feet, his mind clearly short-circuiting. I swore I could literally see smoke rising from his head if it was daytime. That, is because, the general stammered pitifully, darting glances at me. Papa no like us anymore? The world went dead silent at that innocent question. Even the crickets seemed to duck. The servants trailing behind peeked out from their wide sleeves, probably turning blue trying not to laugh. I shot out my hand and smothered Yan Yan's face. Don't mind her, haha. She's only 3. Li Jing, to his own surprise, laughed. He reached over, gently tucking a stray lock of hair behind Yan Yan's ear. Of course Papa loves you. Papa just hasn't learned how to show it properly yet. Yan Yan grinned between them, utterly satisfied. Then Papa learned faster. Before I could wrap my head around it, what? Did the general just answer my daughter by calling himself Papa? My nerves jumped. I looked up, startled and embarrassed, as the general finally reached for my hand, ever so gingerly. His enormous, calloused hand, shaped by years of handling heavy weapons, reminded me of my late Alpha Jianghan's touch. But strangely, it felt deliberate and anchoring and quietly commanding, somehow comforting in a way that was uniquely his. For a long moment, the clatter from outside faded, leaving only the quiet rustle of leaves and the soft glow of moonlight over the lake. Days blurred into weeks, nights filled with dinners no longer for 2 but always 3, at Li Jing's residence. What had been innocent and carefree now drew venomous attention. Why would the general bother with a widowed Omega? Had I seduced him? Flaunted myself disgraceful? Heads turned, eyes narrowed. Omegas sneered, betas whispered about favoritism, and alphas glared as if I'd stolen something forbidden. I kept my head down, cheeks burning. Yan Yan tugged at my collar, babbling happily, blissfully oblivious to the poison surrounding us. Li Jing's parents soon got wind of it and intervened. Why had their son rejected 21 pairings only to choose a widowed Omega, and one raising another alpha's pup? The idea was unbearable to them. By the second month, whispers had grown into open hostility. Omegas from packs Li Jing had previously rejected became restless, even coming to our doors, scheming to wedge themselves into the relationship as it developed. Naturally, I was scared. If my dignity held no value, at least I had to protect my daughter. She needn't be dragged into this. I stopped accepting Li Jing's dinner invitations totally. But Li Jing was relentless. One afternoon, as I hurried home with the last of the groceries, he cornered me in the alley. The crowd gasped, their whispers swelling into a storm. Shame and panic rose inside me. Stop it. People are watching. Let them, we soldiers don't bother too much with manners, Li Jing said, eyes never leaving mine. Later, inside my shabby home, the air between us thickened. People say I'm making a fool of myself, I admitted, trembling. They want me to end this before it destroys my dignity. Do you want their acceptance? Or mine? I don't want them to see me. They'll see what I want them to see, he cut in, ice in his tone. And it works for me better if they learn the truth. The truth? I laughed bitterly. What truth? That I'm nothing but a widowed Omega. And you, the Imperial General, why ruin yourself for me? His gaze flickered, dangerous and unreadable. He stepped closer, heat radiating off him, forcing me to tilt my head up. You underestimate the worth of what's mine. Stop saying that. I don't belong to you, I snapped. You do. His eyes dropped to my lips. And soon they'll know it. Know what? He glanced at Yan Yan, quietly playing nearby. That you and your pup belong under my protection. My breath caught. Why us? You could have any Omega. Why me? His pheromones wrapped over me, thick and intoxicating. His voice dropped, low and growling. Because I've claimed you. Because your pup calls me Papa. She reminded me, strength means nothing without protection. My heart slammed. But I'm an alpha's widow. He corrected. I have a child. Perfect. I need an heir. My mother complains endlessly. But Yan Yan's surname isn't yours. She can take mine. She's already calling me Papa, as if she knows where she belongs. Every word was fire, intoxicating and terrifying. My knees shook, fear twisting with a desperate, forbidden desire. And if I refuse? He closed the distance, his lips silencing me. His kiss was searing, demanding, breaking every wall I'd built. My body betrayed me, leaning into his warmth, answering his claim. A baby's shrill squeal shattered the delicate moment. I also want. Yen, clapping her hands, had crept closer, blissfully unaware of the storm we'd ignited. We broke apart, breathless, lips swollen. My heart pounded. You're impossible, I hissed. Li Jing smirked, brushing his thumb along my lips. And yet you kissed me back. Our first night together was not gentle. It was everything I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. His dominance, my surrender, our heat colliding in a fever that consumed reason. The world narrowed to the sound of my own ragged breath, to the taste of him, to the weight of his touch claiming what had long been hollow. When it was over, and the silence returned, I lay against his chest. My body was spent, but my heart, light. The loneliness I had carried for years had finally loosened its grip. For the first time since my husband's death, I wasn't surviving alone. For the first time, I believed Yen might grow up safe. For the first time, I dared to believe in love again. The days that followed blurred together. The elders demanded answers. They demanded shame. Li Jing gave them none. At every gathering, every challenge, his voice cut through like steel. They are under my protection. Any who oppose it, oppose me. No one spoke after that. Autumn came early that year. Golden ginkgo and crimson maple leaves lined the city gates, dancing gently in the autumn breeze. Li Jing stood by the stables in plain riding robes. Stripped of his top-rank armor, he still was impossible to ignore. When I arrived with Yen perched on my hip, he bowed slightly. I thought you might like a ride outside the walls. The child deserves sunlight, and you deserve air. That doesn't smell of the marketplace. I hesitated, out of habit more than doubt. But Yen, already squealing in my arms, horsey, her legs kicking frantically, as if urging Mama, stop talking, get moving already. Alright, baby, I found myself smiling, brightly. Li Jing lifted us both onto his horse, like I weighed only a bag of potatoes. His arms, steady around my waist as the animal eased into a slow trot. His hand never lingered, never trespassed, yet the warmth of it felt like a vow. Gradually, the city fell behind us, and fields of old and green tall weeds unfurled into our sight. Weeds, taller than the average alphas, swayed like waves, left and then slowly right, gently lulled by the northeast wind. When we reached the riverside, the cherry petals floated across the water like drifting lanterns, dotting the gently meandering river. Li Jing dismounted first, then reached up for me. For a moment, we simply stood there, the sound of the whispering weeds, the trickling river, and the breeze, carrying the faint scent of blossoms, composing nature's subtle symphony. Turning to meet my eyes, he said, Minjun, I've walked among soldiers all my life, carrying the weight of responsibility. General, I blinked. Call me Li Jing. He corrected, softly. Zhao Sun told me, the almanac today favors union. So I speak not as a commander, but as a man who has found in you a home. And the very reason my days are worth living for. The words caught in my throat. He took one slow step closer and held my hands in earnest. I can give you a life without fear. A roof that won't leak when it rains. My name, to protect yours. My strength when you tire. His eyes softened as he glanced at Yen, who was busy gathering petals nearby. And for her? To call me Papa for real. The wind around us picked up, carrying the crisp, earthy scent of early autumn between us. I didn't realize I was crying until he brushed a tear away with his thumb. Minjun, he said, not an order, not a plea, but a promise. From today on, I will stay beside you. Not as your savior, but as your equal. My lips parted, but no words came, only the quiet tremor of yes. And then a little voice piped up between us. Papa? You coming home now? Papa? You to sleep with Mama now, huh? Time stopped. I froze. Li Jing froze. We blinked. Yen Yen, I groaned, covering my tomato face, wishing the ground open up swallow me whole. Li Jing only bent down, scooping her up with one arm. Sure, Sergeant Pup, he said. Yen Yen squinted, tilting her head like a tiny general sizing up orders. Okay? But Papa? I get a drumstick? Deal, baby. Papa Li Jing promised his new daughter, with the affection as if she came from his bone.